As I'm writing and recording this, we are in lockdown due to the novel coronavirus, and this may be over when I actually release this video, but that is probably wishful thinking, and I suppose it also depends on how long I'm sitting on this. Now, I'm not going to discuss the conspiratorial claims and the nonsense around the coronavirus. I won't evaluate these claims, as most of them are even more ridiculous than flat Earth. I am just going to talk about how we go, well, about modeling an outbreak. I will preface this with pointing out that epidemiology and immunology are some of the hardest disciplines imaginable, and mere mortals such as myself should not attempt it in any level of detail, but I can handle the basics. Now, most models in use are based on something called the SIR model, which stands for susceptible, infected, and removed. Now, the first two parts of that is pretty self-explanatory, as these represents the group that are, well, susceptible to being infected and the infected. Removed means that you have either recovered or died, and therefore have been removed from the equation. Of course, the assumption here is that once you have recovered, you are immune, and that the disease is also not spread by organisms feeding on the dead bodies or anything like that. So once you are removed, you are no longer capable of spreading the disease. So the SIR model then presents a pretty simple linear path where you go from susceptible to infected to removed. Now, a person in the susceptible group can get infected and then moves into that infected group. Once they recover or die, they move into that removed group. So it seems pretty simple, but there are some interactions here. You see, an infected person has some finite probability to infect a susceptible person. So as the number of infected people increases, the number of new infections increases. But after a given time, the infected people are removed. So that reduces the number of infected people and by extension the rate at which new infections occur. Okay, for the first step, it seems pretty sensible that the rate of new infections is actually proportional to the number of infected people and the number of susceptible people. And we stick some coefficient in there, which will be a metric of some infection rate. And we divide all of this by the total population. Now, as the susceptible people are infected, they are removed from the susceptible compartment. And this means that the rate of change in the number of susceptible people is given by ds by dt is equal to minus beta is over n, where beta is that coefficient and n is the total population. Now, it seems then quite logical that the number of new infections is then the positive of that. So di by dt is beta times I times s over n. But of course, that is not the whole story, because people either recover or die, and we expect a certain fraction of the number of infected to be removed in any unit of time. And this is expressed with the coefficient gamma. So we have dr by dt, which is the change in the number of people that are removed, and that is equal to gamma times the number of people that are infected at that point in time. But of course, there is a corresponding change to the number of infected people, so our rate of change for the size of our infected compartment then becomes the previous expression minus gamma times I. So we now have three equations. Now, the one for the number of people that are being removed is really quite simple, but it is the other ones that are tricky. The issue is that you have the change in the susceptible compartment being dependent on the number of people in the susceptible compartment, but the number of people in the susceptible compartment is a function of the change in the susceptible department. But to make it weirder, the change in the susceptible department is also proportional to the number of people in the infected compartment. But that number is proportional to the change in the susceptible department. Fortunately, we have computers which can perform a large number of computations, which allows for pretty ham-fisted approximations to be made, and they become rather accurate. And I won't go into this bit of maths, as I really struggled to find something that could be more tedious than that. But I still did the maths, and I got this result for a population of 1,000 people, where there were 3 people infected on day 1. And I selected some values for beta and gamma, which would make a nice plot. Now, this is a baseline for a generic population with no special circumstances, no interventions, and the key assumptions in the model are, as well, taken to be correct. You could see this as what would happen if we did nothing. Now, the parameters beta and gamma are important. Beta represents the infection rate, and gamma represents the recovery rate. Under the assumption that there are not going to be any major medical breakthroughs, you can imagine that gamma remains pretty constant throughout your epidemic. However, you can play around with beta. And this is the whole idea behind social distancing and lockdowns. As there is less contact between people, the infection rates just drop. It's simple as that. So I will just show what happens when you decrease beta for the plots that I showed. And that is what is called flattening the curve. And this has a twofold advantage. Firstly, there aren't many infected people to infect the susceptible compartment, but secondly, this means that there are fewer people in the infected compartment who are in need of medical attention and requiring the resources of the healthcare system. And I think that there's something that really isn't stressed enough. The media will quite happily say that the healthcare system is overly stretched due to the number of COVID-19 patients, but we have to take a moment to think about what this means. Because this means that all the other people who haven't got coronavirus but still need medical attention are also suffering. This means that coronavirus will have a significant impact on the health outcomes of these people, even though they were never infected. But these people will not be counted among the deaths caused by the coronavirus, even though many of these deaths would probably be preventable if the healthcare system wasn't so stretched. When it comes to the coronavirus, or pretty much any other serious epidemic in a modern age, it becomes quite hard to apply these models, though. The process that we would go through is to fit these models to real data, and the idea is that we would take a data set and see which parameters for beta and gamma will fit the data. Now, in theory, this is easy. In reality, not so much. The problem is that you need a good dataset to fit your models to, but in reality, there aren't any good controlled datasets because as the situation develops, policy decisions are made, such as enforcing social distancing or lockdowns. But this does mean that the beta value changes with respect to time, and that becomes difficult to account for. At least in real time. Once the whole thing has blown over, this task will become much easier, and this is the benefit of hindsight. But the most complete data sets we currently have are from China and South Korea. The trustworthiness of the former notwithstanding, there are some difficulties here. China was very quick to adopt very aggressive measures, and South Korea is a strange case considering the amount of people the initial patients had contact with as part of their religious activities. So these data sets are not too useful to apply to other regions. Now, I do have pretty decent fits with reasonable results for some countries, but I will not show them or share the results as I feel that this would be pretty irresponsible of me. Of course, the general trends will be the same in every country, but the height and the width of that curve will vary greatly by country. At the time of recording, almost all countries are still in the initial stage where the number of active cases is increasing rapidly. The issue is that there exist several combinations of value for beta and gamma which will fit the data. And as more information comes in, this task will become easier and fewer solutions will become available. But finally, there is a quick note on the impact of vaccinations on this model. Social distancing decreases the value for gamma, and improvements in medicine increases the value for beta. Vaccines addresses a third important component, and that is the initial value of the number of susceptible people, as vaccinated people will actually start off in the removed compartment. So now I will run the model for different vaccination rates, starting at 0% and moving to 100%, with the assumption that there is a small fraction of vaccines that don't take, and there are some people who are exempt from vaccination. Everything I have presented here is an extremely simplified version of what is being done by the modeling communities. There's a lot more to consider. The transmission rate changes on a daily basis and is different for different communities. Now, I would hazard a guess and say that for younger people, it is relatively low during the week, but spikes on Friday and Saturday night. For Christian communities, it is likely to spike on a Sunday morning. In busy cities, the numbers will be very high, but if you are a hermit, then it is negligible. So then we have the recovery rate as well, or gamma, which is highly dependent on the quality of healthcare and the general health of the population. You can probably figure out that the reality is a bit more complicated than what I have presented, but just to show you the general trend of the model, and now the numbers for Hubei province during the novel coronavirus outbreak. We've also got South Korea, Australia, Germany, New Zealand, Italy, and Spain. But to finish off, the United Kingdom and the US. At this moment, it looks like most countries are either approaching the top of the bump or have just passed it. What is happening in the US and the UK is interesting, and let's hope that that growth slows down in the next few days. You could easily calculate the population-wide increase in infections and by extension the acceleration in a number of infections, but based on these data sets and at this point in time, that is not particularly meaningful, and it would be pretty damn irresponsible for me to do so. Finally, I would like to stress something very important. Until this red line hits 0 for every country and stays there for a while, there's a very good chance that this thing will return. So stay safe and
please just stay the fuck at home. The world has caught a virus, so I've written you a poem. We need your help to cure it, so stay the fuck at home. And if you have got 12 kids or you're living on your own, lock it down and isolate and stay the fuck at home. If you think you're not at risk here, you're living in a dome. It spreads faster than a hooker's leg, so stay the fuck at home. I need the gym, I need the beach, I hear you bitch and moan. You need to grow a brain cell and stay the fuck at home. But I feel fine, I don't feel sick. I'll go out on my own. How thick are you, you selfish prick? Please just stay the fuck at home. From LA through to Berlin, from Wuhan through to Rome, there's people dying every day, so stay the fuck at home. If you need to contact family, use Facebook, Skype, or phone. We've got the fucking internet, so stay the fuck at home. The only way to slow it down is isolate, not roam. Please help the world get back on track and stay the fuck at home. Stay the fuck at home, stay the fuck at home. Don't you be a fucking dick, please stay the fuck at home. Stay the fuck at home.